I blame the MCU for this. The seeds for the Contest of Chaos, which recently wrapped up in the Avengers Annual for 2023, was first planted back in 2021. The WandaVision Disney Plus show had just come out, and fans were loving it, speculating over story elements like crazy. One of those elements was the Darkhold, which is basically the Marvel Comics equivalent of the Necronomicon. It's an evil book filled with evil spells that does evil things. That's really all you need to know about it. In 2021, Marvel published a Darkhold-based mini-event, the bookends of which were written by Steve Orlando. In the Darkhold Alpha one-shot, we saw Doctor Doom attempt to use the Darkhold to gain ultimate magical power. But the more of the Darkhold that someone reads, the more chaotic, the more dangerous, and the more insane they become. The Darkhold is a conduit for power from the elder god Chthon, a god of chaos and madness, and nothing good can come from its use. Doom managed to retain his sanity thanks to a loophole and sheer force of personality, but reading the book still opened a pathway from Chthon's exile in an other realm dimension back to Earth, putting it in danger. Doctor Doom transported himself to Chthon in order to bring the god to heal, while the Scarlet Witch summoned backup. She had learned of a spell that would summon 5 people who had the traits necessary to destroy Chthon, or at least push him back to his otherworldly prison, if necessary. This summoned Iron Man, Spider-Man, Blade, Wasp, and Black Bolt of the Inhumans to her. She told them that they must read from the Darkhold in order to temper themselves against Chthon's madness, but they must not read too much, for if they did, they might lose themselves forever. At first, the 5 heroes were reluctant to do this. It all sounds super crazy and super dangerous, and for the most part, magic isn't really their thing, except maybe Blade. But then Doctor Doom returned from his battle with Chthon, beaten and battered, and just shy of cowed, and that's only because Doctor Doom would never admit that he was defeated. He just decided to walk away from the fight for a minute so he could better prepare for the next time when he actually would defeat Chthon. Doctor Doom does not get beaten, he is merely delayed. Doom then returned to his home nation of Latveria to lick his wounds and regroup, but his butt-kicking demonstrated exactly the level of threat the heroes were facing. Chthon needed to be stopped, and so the heroes read from the Darkhold. But they did indeed read too far. Instead of becoming the Darkhold defenders with capital Ds, they were instead transformed into monstrous versions of themselves, called the Darkhold Defilers, also with capital Ds. You could then read a series of 5 one-shots, one for each of the characters, if you so liked. These comics actually don't affect the narrative of the Darkhold mini-event at all, which really surprised me as a reader. Wanda says that the stories that the characters were reading from the Darkhold reflect the sins of the reader, turning you into your worst self. So I figured that the one-shots would, be those stories, explaining how someone goes from Spider-Man the good guy to Spider-Man the Darkhold Defiler. But no, not at all. These comics actually have nothing to do with anything whatsoever, which from a reader standpoint was a bit of a disappointment. But they are fun, horror-inspired versions of the characters, and some of the stories are actually really neat. The Iron Man one is perhaps my personal favorite. It is a great body horror story, I'm not a big horror movie guy, but if you're going to do body horror, if you're going to do a horror movie, then body horror is the way to get me. The story concludes in the Darkhold Omega one-shot. The Scarlet Witch teleports the Defilers to Chthon, and in their destructive hunger for violence, they start to attack everything around them, which includes first Chthon's army, and then, when those guys are dead, they take the fight to the god himself. This manages to weaken him, and it allows the Scarlet Witch to ally with Doctor Doom once again in order to take Chthon down. But just before the final blow was struck, the Scarlet Witch turned on Doctor Doom. She hit him with a blast of fire from inside of his own armor, forcing him to drop the true Darkhold. She took it up. Knowing that destroying Chthon was useless, Wanda used her powers to absorb the Darkhold into herself. She effectively became the Darkhold, and she sealed Chthon within her soul. If Wanda ever dies, then Chthon will be freed again, but for now, the threat of Chthon and the Darkhold was subdued, held at bay by the very existence of the Scarlet Witch. Ironically, the Scarlet Witch did die in the Trial of Magneto miniseries, but no one cared enough about the Darkhold event to reference it pretty much at all. I actually skipped out on reading the Darkhold mini-event entirely when these comics first came out for precisely that reason. The Darkhold event didn't spin out of an existing story that was going on in a comic book somewhere. There was no build up to this, nor did it continue into another comic book or an existing storyline at all. The Darkhold mini-event came from nothing short of interest in the Darkhold thanks to the MCU's WandaVision, and so back into nothing, all of the story elements returned. Nobody and nothing was changed because of these comics, short of Wanda keeping the Darkhold and Chthon as part of her soul. And that wasn't going to get brought up unless the Scarlet Witch got an ongoing series, right? And what are the odds of that these days? The next piece of our magical puzzle was 2022's Midnight Suns miniseries. Thanks to Agatha Harkness's incredibly well-received role in said Disney Plus show back in 2021, Marvel Comics set out to make Agatha an actual sellable, viable character. Longtime fans of the comics largely knew Agatha as the nanny of the Fantastic Four's Franklin Richards, or maybe as the magical mentor of the Scarlet Witch, or perhaps as the oldest-looking living woman alive. It's really no surprise that Agatha worked in WandaVision thanks to her compelling role in the story. Catherine Hahn's interpretation of the character was extremely charming while still being threatening, and she had one of easily the best theme songs I've ever heard in my life. Everything about Agatha in the MCU's WandaVision was gold in a way that Agatha has never been in the comics. How could we not fall in love with that version of the character? This rise to match the MCU stardom was written by Ethan Sachs, and the Midnight Suns miniseries revealed new facets of Agatha's history. Back in 1428, Agatha and a coven of witches summoned the Babers of Valtor to cleanse the earth of the unmagical, in an attempt to protect themselves from witch hunts. The main witch pushing this effort was named Laveau, whose descendant was Marie Laveau, the famed voodoo witch of New Orleans. There was also a Minoru, the ancestor of Nico Minoru of the Runaways, and two other witches, one named Zorik and one named Corina. The spell required a sacrifice, a fact which Laveau held from the others until it was too late. The demonic being Valtor claimed Corina, kidnapping her to his own dimension of poisonous acidic gases. But he upheld his end of the bargain, unleashing his demonic forces on Europe. Agatha, however, balked at the loss of her friend. They were doing this to protect witches. How could they sacrifice a witch in order to save themselves? And so she fought back. When she did so, she damaged the Black Mirror, which served as a conduit for Valtor's power. With it broken, the mists would be cut off, Valtor's spell would be cut short, and Corina would be trapped forever. The world was saved, but witches and magical beings across the world would suffer for it, as did Corina, all thanks to Agatha. Unbeknownst to her, Corina then spent years gathering power and energy from Valtor, eventually taking his throne as Corrosion, the new ruler of the Vapors. She launched an attack which the Midnight Suns ultimately repelled. While they did all the fighting, Agatha attacked her old friend with a dagger, absorbing Corina's power. The repaired Black Mirror was then destroyed, sending Corina back into the Vapor Dimension, but Agatha absorbed enough magical energy to restore her long-lost youth. For the first time in a long time, Agatha was done living in the past. She could now look to the future. Which brings us to the Scarlet Witch Annual released in 2023, which saw a youngified Agatha Harkness visit her old student, the Scarlet Witch, offering to help lighten her load. That is where the contest of chaos officially began, and it's where I'll actually start reviewing the comics involved in this event. I'm clearly not doing this episode like a classic breakdown. To be quite honest, there isn't really a lot of storytelling meat on these comic bones for me to give them the full breakdown treatment. So instead, I will be reading each issue that is a part of the Contest of Chaos. I'll give you all my thoughts on them, and then I'll do like a final thoughts thing at the end. But we're going to cover the whole event in one episode. So, my name is Ben, and this is episode 28 of Comic Book Breakdown, The Contest of Chaos. Our first stop on the Contest of Chaos is Scarlet Witch Annual 1 from 2023, written by Steve Orlando, who's been writing the main Scarlet Witch ongoing series since its inception, and penciler Carlos Nieto. This issue is a really strong start to the Contest of Chaos. This is honestly what got me excited for the overall event. The book basically covers a confrontation between Agatha Harkness and her pupil, the Scarlet Witch. In Wanda's ongoing series, she's really begun to overcome a lot of the self-doubt and inherent chaos of her own life. From a meta story perspective, Wanda tends to have this cycle of going crazy and then gaining control for a while and then going crazy again and then getting control for again. Back and forth, back and forth. And we're currently in one of those cycles where Wanda has probably had the most control she has had in a very long time. She has maintained reality altering at a whim level powers, but without any of the insanity or dangerousness that previous bouts of control have always kind of been tinted with. If you read Scarlet Witch's main ongoing series, you see that she's very much in control. She's very confident, very calm. She knows that she has one of the broadest powers in the Marvel Universe, and she does her best to use it wisely. It's one of the things I've honestly loved the most about the Scarlet Witch ongoing series, and one of the things that I love about this annual. Wanda has conquered the demonic god Chthon. She has imprisoned him within her soul, within a metaphorical labyrinth made of the true Darkhold, which was a magical artifact I spoke about earlier. And on the one hand, this was something that kind of set me off a little bit with this annual, was when I started buying this volume of Scarlet Witch, I didn't know that I was going to need to have read the little Darkhold mini event. So when this story opened by referencing things that happened there, I was immediately thrown. And the thing that kind of kills me the most about it is there's no direct reference to the Darkhold mini event. There is no asterisk by the editor, hey, go buy these comics published, when were they published? It was before the pandemic? Might have been during. It might have been 2019, 2020. So there's no direct editorial thing telling you to pick up these comics. The only reason I knew about them was because I had previously looked into picking them up. And so I kind of had the knowledge of, oh, this is what happened in those books. I don't know if I need them or not. Turns out I did. Here we are. So Agatha Harkness comes to the town of Lotkill, which is where Wanda has been staying. She's got a little magic shop called Emporium, and Agatha wants the Darkhold. We don't know why. We're not told why. And even within the context of this story, Agatha doesn't approach Wanda with the idea of, I want the Darkhold to accomplish X, Y, and Z. She just shows up and goes, Wanda, you have a lot of confidence, and that's great. I love that for you. But inevitably, somebody's going to show up who outthinks you or outplans you or outsmarts you, and they're going to mess you up. And what happens when that thing that you've been keeping locked up in your soul, Chthon and the Darkhold, has a chance to escape on the whole world? We will all suffer for your inability to control yourself. Agatha then challenges, basically, Wanda to a fight, which goes throughout the length of the issue. Wanda begins, dimension hopping. She's jumping around from different planes of reality. The two characters are magically fighting each other and arguing. Wanda argues that, no, I have had problems, yes, but I have overcome them. I am maintaining my perspective on who I am and what I want out of life and what I am working towards. And Agatha maintains the perspective of, it doesn't matter how good you're doing at keeping all of these plates balanced. Eventually, a plate's gonna fall. And when that plate's Chthon, we're all gonna be in trouble. Let me help take the burden. And even as part of the story, so before I jump to the ending, so the two characters make their argument, they confront each other, and at the end of it, Agatha doesn't really give up, but the Scarlet Witch talks her into, I've got this. And Agatha has to finally just be like, look, I can't fight you forever. You will outpower me every day of the week. I am smarter than you. I am more cunning than you. I'm a more skilled witch than you are. But I'll never outpower you. So fine. I guess I'll just have to accept that you've got this. And she feigns being proud of her student. And then she leaves Lotkill after a lovely evening out with Wanda. Wanda then returns to her shop, and her sidekick, I guess, at the moment, Darcy, who minds the shop when Wanda is not there. And yes, that is Darcy from the MCU. Darcy is like, hey, I helped this customer out with this advice. And you can see Wanda begins to go like, I would not have... And then she stops and she goes, you know what? No, I would have done something different, but it wouldn't have changed the outcome. You did good. Wanda is literally demonstrating on the page that she is willing to share some of the burden that she has placed upon herself with somebody that she trusts, like Darcy. On the one hand, this indicates growth for her character and that she hears Agatha's message of, you can't do everything at once. And she goes, okay, I'll let Darcy help out. But to me, it also indicates that she doesn't trust Agatha with any of this. She does invite Agatha to stay in Lotkill and to help her out at the shop, and Agatha says, no, I'll watch from a distance, peace, I'm out, because she's got things that she's up to, because it turns out Agatha has, in fact, outsmarted and outmaneuvered her student. When Agatha launched her attack, she slipped a little piece of her soul inside of the tea that Wanda was drinking, and when Wanda consumed that tea, she consumed Agatha's soul. Agatha then made her way through the Darkhold labyrinth. She found the dark god Chthon, and she ripped out his heart in a really cool ending. And overall, reading this issue, it all works really well. Agatha is presented as both powerful, sure, but also cunning and smart. She is 3 steps ahead of Wanda the entire time that she is interacting with her. She knows exactly what she's walking into and exactly what she wants to get out of it and how she's going to get out of it. It's smart, and in setting Agatha up as a... Konark, please. Sorry, my cat's going to the bathroom and he had to let me know. In setting Agatha up as the main driving force behind the Contest of Chaos, it works really well. She feels like she has a plan. We don't quite know what she's working towards, but we know it could be villainous because she did outthink and outmatch our heroine, the Scarlet Witch, but that's also not necessarily true. Agatha's motivations could be altruistic. She could know of a better way to control or contain or manipulate Chthon. I don't think that's likely. He is a demigod of chaos, but it's possible. Wanda can clearly do it, so why couldn't Agatha, right? So it sets her up really well as the main driving force of the Contest of Chaos, and it gives us a clear goal that she's working towards. She wants to recreate the Darkhold. We don't know why, but it's an interesting driving thing for us moving into the rest of the contest. This is the issue that got me really excited for the Contest of Chaos, and then I started to look at the matchups of who was coming up, and I started going, you know what? There's some really interesting things that could be going on here if these stories are well written. Let's check this one out. So, next up, the Spider-Man Annual. The Spider-Man Annual, which is the first official part of the Contest of Chaos, is probably one of my least favorite issues in the entire bit of the story. Written by Stephanie Phillips with art by Alberto Foche Duarte. I don't like almost anything about this. Like, I knew going into it, it was going to be Wolverine and Spidey, which is, on the one hand, could be a really interesting matchup. These characters have history, they know each other, they've worked together, they've had each other's backs, they've fought each other before. They know how to superhero. Both of them. They've got years of experience doing this kind of thing. Putting them into a cage match and having them fight each other should be an entertaining thing. These are 2 of comicdom's most recognizable characters. I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt, and admittedly it's the Scarlet Spider, but it's still a Spider-Man shirt. And it really frustrates me to come into this knowing that this is like the first real step into the Contest of Chaos, and it's this. It's this. It's just... So the issue does pick up a little bit on Agatha's plotline. We do see that the demonic force corrosion, which is what Agatha battled back in the Midnight Suns miniseries, is still actively trying to get her. There seems to be a hint that something is coming, and Agatha wants to recreate the Darkhold so that she can use the Darkhold to defend the world from whatever is coming. She realizes that this might make her look like a bad guy, but she knows that the world needs saving first, even if she looks like a villainess while she's doing it. And so she seems to be casting a spell using the blood of Chthon to write a new Darkhold. As part of this, we don't get an explanation for it, Spider-Man and Wolverine are summoned to an ancient mystical city in a location that shouldn't exist. It's a real location and a fictional city. Both of the characters confirm that the place feels real. Wolverine at one point says that it's not an illusion, it is a real physical place. And the two characters find a glowing purple orb that, for whatever reason, makes them want to fight over it. They want to kill over it. Spider-Man legit says, because he narrates the majority of the issue. Wolverine does narrate some of it, but Spidey narrates the majority of it. And Spider-Man says, I don't like Logan, really, but I've never wanted to kill him, and right now I want to kill him. So it's very clear that whatever this sphere is, it is having an undue influence on Spidey and Wolverine, causing them to fight over it. Wolverine ends up winning the fight, he gets teleported away to wherever Agatha is at, and we'll later learn that Agatha is hiding on a ship at the edge of the Bermuda Triangle. And the first time we see it, she's on a boat and the camera pulls out and we see a literal physical triangle cut out of the ocean and like light is shining up out of it. And the first time I saw it, I was just like, okay, it's a boat on the water and there's a triangle. I totally didn't put two and two together. And I feel like an absolute boob because of it. Oh my God, it should have been so obvious. A triangle in the ocean. There's only like two that matter. It's the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Triangle over by Japan. God, sometimes I'm dumb. But anyways, the reasons that I don't like the issue are really threefold. One, this is the least interesting Spider-Man I've probably ever read. He's not funny, he's not witty, he's not even very entertaining, and the story elements containing him are so lazily written. So we get two opening pages, I think, with Agatha dealing with a corrosion demon before we jump over to Spider-Man. We get 3 pages of Spider-Man fighting the Rhino and literally saying bad jokes, like to the point where when he says it, like the New Yorkers around him are like, yo, boo, that sucks. Like nobody thinks this is funny. And then Spider-Man crawls through the window back to his apartment and suddenly he's magically transported. You could have just opened the issue with Spider-Man having been magically transported. This is an issue where the selling point is that Spider-Man is going to fight Wolverine. You know what I don't want to see? Anything that is not Wolverine and Spider-Man going at it. These two characters have such really well-built complementary powers in terms of Wolverine has to get close in order to do damage, and thanks to his web, Spider-Man can keep Wolverine at a distance for most of this fight. This could be really interesting with these two characters having to hunt and fight each other. Wolverine is a master tracker. Spider-Man could be playing like he could get a hold of the orb and then he's like hiding out in the city trying to use his intellect, because Spider-Man's like a super genius, to figure out what's going on. But the whole time Wolverine's hunting him from the shadows, smelling him and tracing his spore or whatever the hell. That could have been a really cool angle for this. It could have been Predator, but starring Spider-Man as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Wolverine as the Predator. That was a dope idea. Why didn't we get that comic book? There's also the fact that because the two characters are magically mind-controlled during the fight, Spider-Man is the one who realizes this. And I hate that Spider-Man is the one who realizes this, because out of the two characters who have a history with mind control, the main one sure as hell isn't Spider-Man. It's Wolverine. His whole shtick is that he's got 6 claws coming out of his hands, he's got a healing factor, and he gets brainwashed every other day of the week. He's killed for the Canadian government. He's killed for, who's the Romulus, the weird Wolverine rip-off bad guy. He's killed for Professor X sometimes. If anybody in this miniseries should have been trained to either shrug off or at least recognize the effects of mind control, it should have been Logan. And if you're going to go, well, the effect of the magic was so powerful that Logan couldn't fight his way through it, well, then he should have been reverted to like a bestial animal state. He should have been coming at Spider-Man like he was a leg of ham and Wolverine was like lunchtime. Why are we getting a smart Wolverine who tells jokes? Like, at one point, he literally says the same basic joke Spider-Man says earlier in the issue, but Wolverine themed instead, and Spidey's like, you stole my joke, dude! And just, why is... the idea that Wolverine is bad at comedy, I think, is accurate. He's not typically a funny dude, but he's fun. But why are you putting Wolverine and Spider-Man on the same comedy level? Why would you do that from a writing perspective? Spider-Man tells the actual good jokes, and Wolverine would tell the dumb joke that Spidey would be like, oh, come on, man. Like, you're not even trying. Like, I appreciate you trying, but you're not trying. You're the best there is at what you do, and what you do is not tell jokes, my man. So that really frustrated me. And then the other thing that really killed me about it is over in the Spider-Man ongoing series, Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man, Peter has been teamed up with Norman Osborn, who is currently a good guy. And in order to make up for all the bad crap that he's done in his life, Norman has built basically like an armored Spider-Man suit. And it's not like the Iron Spider kind of suit. He's got like a Spider-Man helmet now, and it's actually got like LED eyes that can like change expressions. It's actually really cute. He's got like an armored chest piece. He's got armored gauntlets that have like these little pods, and I won't lie, I don't know what the pods do. I'm not currently reading Amazing Spider-Man, and what little I have read of the Spider-Man book, which I have read, hasn't really had him exploring or utilizing the new tools that are at his disposal. But you know what would have been really interesting in this fight is Wolverine walking into it going, I know Peter Parker. I fought him. I fought alongside him. I really can't stand him, but I know that he's a good guy when it comes right down to it. But then Spider-Man has all of these traps and new tools at his disposal to either keep Logan back or trip him up or throw him off the scent. This is one of the few times in Spider-Man's like legit comic book history where he has new tools and devices at his disposal to be used against an enemy who can take anything. Spider-Man could have thrown a glob of acid in Wolverine's face, and he's going to be upset about it, but he's going to recover from it at the end of the day. And we get none of that. There is no creative use of Spider-Man's powers. There's no interesting use of Wolverine's powers. Like, literally the first time that Wolverine encounters Spider-Man, he tackles him out of a window with his claws out. And then when Spidey's like, dude, what are you doing? Wolverine's like, yeah, you don't smell like an illusion, bub. That's how you justify tackling a man out of the window? Be saying you had to get close to smell him? Like, this is Spider-Man. He literally has a Spidey sense, which, by the way, never goes off during the fight. And again, I would probably chalk that up to the magical influence of the purple glowing orb. Or it could just be bad writing because Stephanie Phillips clearly does not have a grasp of how to write Spider-Man well. I feel like most of y'all have listened to enough of the show to know I have a really hard time saying that I do not like a comic book or that a comic book is bad. Most comics, I feel like a lot of work goes into them. Like, too much work goes into a comic book for me to sit here and go, this book is an absolute piece of trash and nobody should ever read it. And this book is so built to be like the kind of comic, right? Like, this is the kind of comic that you could give to somebody who's not a comic fan and be like, you want to see something cool? Spidey versus Wolverine. And there's just so much more. There are so many more interesting encounters between these two characters that this is not the book that I would hand them. This book's frustrating. It's not very entertaining. It doesn't look terribly well. I'm pretty confident that I've seen Alberto Duarte's artwork somewhere else. I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Hello, Co. Yeah, but it does not look particularly good here. Again, it doesn't really do anything for me. I do like the fantasy landscape that he creates in the city of El Dorado, I guess you'd call it. But otherwise, nothing about this issue stands. Hello, I agree. Yep, goodbye. You can leave the room. Nothing about this issue is special. Nothing about this issue is interesting. Nothing about it's clever. It's just a comic book. I suppose one of the few things that I do like is that when Wolverine grabs the purple orb, when he gets transported to Agatha, the next time we see him, he is wearing the purple, black, and gray armor that he was given in the Midnight Suns miniseries, which is a neat callback to kind of like that is where this new modern story arc with Agatha really began for the most part. It's almost like this is Wolverine's magic clothes. Like now when Wolverine's got to deal with magic stuff, he'll put on the purple and gray, which is silly, but it's comic booky. And I have to admit, I do kind of like that's if there's a silver lining to this issue, it's the fact that somebody acknowledged that the Midnight Suns miniseries existed, not just in the presence of corrosion, but also in Logan's costuming choice. That's the best. If I were rating this issue on like a scale of 5, this is a 1. It's a comic book. You can read it if that's your thing. But is this a good comic book? I would have to say it is absolutely not. And it is a weak start to this event. God, I hate saying that. It's like a $5 comic. It isn't even like a cheap comic. It'd be one thing if it was like, oh, well, it's $2. Oh, yeah, for $2, I'll read this. Sure. $5 for this. Next up, Iron Man Annual. The Iron Man Annual, thankfully, is pretty much exactly what I wanted out of the Wolverine Spider-Man issue. The issue was written by author Jason Liu with artwork by David Cutler for the main story anyways. I really like Cutler's artwork in this. It's very clear. It's very concise. It reminds me of a less refined Javier Rodriguez. It's got a little bit of that animated flavor, but the characters look fairly realistic. Like I said, everything just works from a visual perspective. I like this way more than I like the what went down in the Spider-Man Annual. Storm is wearing the current clothes that she can be seen wearing over in X-Men Red. She's got a very fantastic design. Iron Man is sporting his current beaten up Iron Man armor, which also lines up with events that have been going on over in Iron Man's ongoing series, which is nice. Both of the character status quo gets referenced within the story. Jason Liu has both of the characters drawn to the Crystal Caves in Mexico, and they enter the caves, and as they enter the caves, they kind of like, they don't have the same like, I'm possessed and I need to fight over a thing that we saw in the Spider-Man issue with Wolverine and Spidey, but instead it's almost like the caves just kind of like amplify their own arrogance is probably the best way to describe it. They immediately start sniping and picking at each other, where Iron Man starts picking on Storm for the fact that, she used to be a goddess in Africa, like pretended to be a goddess when she was younger, and then Storm being like, yeah, look at the authoritarian Avenger strolling in here thinking he's going to save the day when you don't do anything to help mutant kind. Why don't you get off my back, Tony? The two characters bring up old wounds like as far back as Civil War, which I don't think I've seen a comic really reference in ages, not since the Cap Iron Man team up from 2018, 2019 miniseries. So it's just, this issue plays with all of the history between these two characters. They both use their powers intelligently. For the most part, they both sound like themselves. It acknowledges their personal histories as they're going through the Crystal Caves. When the characters reference something that previously happened, like when they're at their lowest, you'll see like a reflection of it in the crystals themselves, which again is just a really nice nod to the continuity of these two characters. Jason Liu, in writing this, knows Storm and Iron Man's history, and he presents all of it as the meat of like, this is why these two characters are fighting. It's not because they were possessed by a purple orb. It's because there's legit history between these two. And if one of them's having a bad day and they just don't feel like putting up with the other one's crap, they're going to get to a point where they're just going to start a fight. And is it unnecessary? Absolutely. But it makes sense for these two characters, and it feels more realistic than the Wolverine Spider-Man fight, where Spider-Man was like, my head's been messed with. I know this. And it just feels, I mean, it just happens. Like it happens because the plot demanded it happen. Where here, neither of the characters realize that they're being influenced at all. Maybe they realize on some degree that they're being tricked at a certain point in the story, but by then it's too late. The damage has been done. And then, of course, as an X fan, I just love the fact that Storm wins. Oh, Storm wins. She hits Tony with a lightning bolt so big Zeus would be proud. Ha. And, and in Storm's defense, it's not like she tries to kill Tony. She is trying to knock him out of the fight long enough that they can resolve this, and she does. She knocks him out, they leave the cave, but when they leave the crystal cave, like, a horde of the crystals just, like, rise up with them, and then Storm vanishes. And unlike the previous issue where, like, she vanishes and we can guess that she's going over to Agatha's boat in the Bermuda Triangle, but we don't have a confirmation of that this time. Storm does not get a costume redesign so that she looks more magic-y like Wolverine did. She's just gone. And that's it. I did forget to mention that at the end of the Spider-Man annual, there is a backup story that is written by Stephanie Phillips with art by Alberto Foche Duarte that continues Spider-Man's story, where after his fight with Wolverine, he goes back to New York and he contacts Jessica Jones and he's like, yo, Wolverine's a missing person. Something is up. We need to find him. And Jessica Jones go, well, it sounds like you were dealing with magic. So in this issue, they go visit Clea, who I believe at the time was the current Sorcerer Supreme of the Marvel Universe. I'm not sure if Doctor Strange had come back from the dead yet or not. But in any case, it's cool to see Clea get used outside of the Doctor Strange books. I really liked her run as the Sorceress Supreme. That book was super fun, a great lead into the current Doctor Strange ongoing series. And it's cool to see her get pulled into this. Again, this is a magic thing. There's generally speaking 2, maybe 3 people you call in the Marvel Universe when you're dealing with magic. And it's Doctor Strange, the Scarlet Witch, or now Clea. So I thought that was a really cool use of the character. I don't enjoy most of the rest of the story anyways. I don't know why Spider-Man is still there. You could argue his sense of responsibility and that, well, I need to figure out what happened to Logan. But again, he's just another person talking. He doesn't do anything interesting. He doesn't add anything to these scenes. As a backup feature, it's really uninteresting. I would rather have seen more of Agatha and what she is up to, or maybe more of a hint of like her plot line or how she feels, or even more time spent explaining how this contest of chaos works, right? Because the situation we are presented with here is in details very different from how it was presented in the Spider-Man annual. Spider-Man annual, Spider-Man and Wolverine were magically transported to a different location, like a completely non-existent location on Earth, and fought over a purple orb that took over their minds. Storm and Iron Man were both summoned to the Crystal Caves by voices in their heads that mimic close friends and allies and loved ones that they've been parted from over the years. They go to the Crystal Caves. There's no magical object there other than the crystals, which I guess are magic because they're crystals. And then the 2 characters get angry at each other, fight, and then Storm disappears at the end. Sure, we had 2 superheroes fight like the Spider-Man annual, but the rest of the methodology for how and why they fight and what they fought over is completely different, which is just really weird and kind of jarring. And so in terms of like, what plotline are we following forward here? Sure, I guess we're following this tournament, but to what end? We still don't know, and this issue doesn't provide us with any answers or even any clues. So it is a weird secondary step in terms of the overall narrative that we're getting here. It's a great standalone issue. If you're a Storm fan or an Iron Man fan, wow, this was a great showcase of both of their characters, both of their histories, and it does a pretty good job of like demonstrating why each of these characters is good at what they do, even if at the end of the day Storm is better. Our next issue is Fantastic Four Annual. The Fantastic Four Annual is written by Zach Gorman, who I largely know as kind of a more comedy-leaning comic book author. I can't say that I'm familiar with any of his works off the top of my head. I know that I've heard his name before, but I don't know from where, with art by Alan Robinson, who definitely leans more towards a comedy side. The two of them do pair well together. But this particular issue sees the Fantastic Four's Johnny Storm, a.k.a. the Human Torch, taking on Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider. I gotta say, this issue is a step back in overall tone and quality for me. Again, we get another slow opening where Johnny Storm is shoe shopping with Benjamin J. Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing, one of my favorite characters in Marvel Comics. And then Johnny steps through a door to a bathroom, and he is transported to what looks like hell. There he runs into Johnny Blaze. Johnny Blaze is like, look, I was king of hell for a while. This isn't hell. We're probably somewhere in the Midwest. And he, like, touches through the illusion somehow and, like, touches the real world. So they have been teleported to another location from wherever they were, but then they are encased within an illusion that is hiding wherever they really were. Again, I think this is kind of meant to echo what happened with Wolverine and Spider-Man, where the two characters were transported to a place that shouldn't exist in a real-world location. But this also isn't the same thing. Like, in the Marvel Universe, hell is a real place. It does exist. Characters have literally gone there. Multiple characters have gone to hell in the Marvel Universe and crawled their way back. It's not a fake place. So the idea that there's a fake illusion hell that the two characters fight in is really weird to me. And again, just the fact that we've got a similar situation as the Wolverine Spider-Man fight, but it's different, really kind of throws me. Anyways, the two characters fight. Neither character honestly does a very good job fighting in terms of, like, Johnny Storm is a character whose powers are probably one of the most dangerous in the Marvel Universe. Like, Johnny can burn so hot that he burns as hot as the sun. Like, if Johnny wanted to melt planet Earth, he could make a pretty good dent in it. And I was really looking forward to seeing if Johnny's real science-y fire, powered by cosmic energy, would put any kind of dent in Ghost Rider, who is a character basically made of hellfire. And, I mean, if anything, the issue answers the question with a resounding no. At one point, Johnny does throw fireballs at Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider is literally just like, you're like fireflies throwing snowflakes into the sun. It's just, it doesn't matter to him at all, which is pretty badass. But the Robinson's artwork is so cartoony that nothing here feels badass. Everything feels silly and doofy. Especially Johnny Storm has been terribly rocking a handlebar mustache during the current volume of Fantastic Four. And over there, it really works because they're really playing up the fact that Johnny is kind of a goofy doof character. And here, it's really just frustrating, kind of. He's too doofy for me in this issue. Much like with the Wolverine Spider-Man issue, the comedy leaning in this issue is way too strong, and I do not appreciate it. Like, don't get me wrong, Johnny Storm is a prankster, and he is a funny character, but he is also, like, been to war in the Marvel Universe. He has fought in life-or-death situations. He has almost more adventuring experience than anybody in the Marvel Universe, short of, like, Spider-Man. Johnny's been doing this crap since he was, like, 18 or 19. He should be able to put up a really interesting, really smart fight against a character like Ghost Rider. And in a way he does. The two characters end up on a hell train. And in order to win the day, Johnny basically chains Ghost Rider to, like, I don't know, it looks like a shopping cart to me. And then he burns a hole in the train and drops the shopping cart through the train, which then gets caught on the tracks and it pulls Ghost Rider out of the train. Like, on the one hand, I do think it's a really clever way to demonstrate that Johnny is more than just fire powers. He does have a brain and he's a decent strategist. But it's also a really cold-blooded way for Johnny to take out a character like Ghost Rider, even with the caveat of, like, hey, I know this guy's a good guy and he'll eventually recover from this. Like, you really want him to be, like, dragged underneath a train for a length of time? Like, oh my god, dude, that's cold. And for a book that looks this silly, that's way too dark for me. So I don't know. This book feels like a Saturday morning cartoon almost in terms of its overall tone. The two characters end up running into, like, a cat demon that spits a smaller cat demon out of its mouth. And the whole time I'm reading this going, like, if everything they're seeing is the real world but covered with an illusion of hell, what is this? Who is the cat demon spitting a cat demon? Like, I'm imagining that it's like an old lady throwing her chihuahua at Johnny Storm, which I think is hilarious, but doesn't ever get explained. It never makes sense within the story itself. This was it was still a more enjoyable read than the Spider-Man Annual. I will give it that. But this, for me, again, was a step backwards in terms of our overall tone and story presentation. Reading the end story with Spider-Man, which continues to be written by Stephanie Phillips, Clea introduces this idea that magic is constantly seeking a state of entropy. Like, magic as a whole is chaos, and it wants to fall apart and break apart and just be energy again, random energy. And Spider-Man's like, like entropy. And Clea goes, no, like magic. Shut up, nerd. But it's kind of hinting at this idea that the dangers of magic are only contained because of spellcasters, sorcerers, wizards, magicians, whatever you want to call them, all of these people coming together to kind of bind the magic and put rules to it and make it a thing that works for everybody's benefit. I think this is really interesting because I feel like this is kind of explaining what Agatha's doing. She's trying to take this random, dark, crazy chaos magic and put a way to control it back into the world, the Darkhold, where Wanda has had it contained within her soul all of this time. However, that's going to bring up all kinds of questions where, like, if Wanda has the true Darkhold still in her soul, because she does, Chthon is just, in theory, dead. And I don't even know if you can kill Chthon for any real length of time. Like, he's a demon god. If a guy like Thor or Hercules can come back from the dead, every other day of the week, why couldn't Chthon? Especially since his whole thing is that he's chaos. You think it'd be like, oh, he's dead? 3.5 minutes from now, he's going to come back to life because he's random chaos. I don't know, honestly. And so if the Darkhold is imprisoned in Wanda's soul, but then Agatha makes a new Darkhold, do they, like, cancel each other out? Doesn't that just mean there's two dangerous Darkholds in the world? Doesn't that mean there's more options for bad things to happen? I don't understand why Agatha thinks doing this is going to help. We seem to have been... Last episode, there seems to be this idea... Not last episode, I'm sorry. With our first backup feature in Spider-Man's Annual, Agatha seemed to be hinting at she needs the Darkhold in order to battle a threat bigger even than Chthon, which is fine, but the idea that she then needs to make another Darkhold, a weapon almost as dangerous as Chthon himself, really seems stupid. Like, why not contact all of these magical people? Like, even if the idea is that they're too altruistic and they're too good, wouldn't it make more sense to be like, why don't I summon all the magic-y people and be like, yo, here's this dark threat coming. We need a way to stop it. My plan, Darkhold 2.0, and here's all the things, the benefits that it will give us, even if there are risks. And then everybody goes, no, that's stupid. And then Agatha goes ahead with her plan anyways, because she would. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks going on in the background right now that I feel like our backup features could be better explaining than just Spider-Man complains to Jessica Jones about how much he hates magic. But like I said, I'm trying... I really don't want to spend this whole episode harping about how bad Spider-Man is written. But this issue, a step back from the Iron Man one, still a step up from the Spider-Man one. But yeah, this one doesn't do a whole lot for me either. Stop number 4 on the Contest of Chaos will be the Moon Knight Annual. The Moon Knight Annual is my favorite issue of this so far. Written by author Jed MacKay and drawn by, and I hope I say this right, Crees Lee. Their name is written as Creees. Crease? I am not sure. But one of the things that makes this particular issue special is that Jed MacKay is the current ongoing author for Moon Knight's most recent volume. I want to say the book just passed issue 25. I think issue 26 or 27 was the last one out. This is an author who knows Moon Knight. He's got a good feel for the character. He's the one currently guiding the vision of the character. So Moon Knight is incredibly well written in this issue. And fun fact, Jed MacKay is also the creator of Moon Knight's opponent, the Korean superhero Taeguk Gi. Taeguk Gi originally appeared in the Black Cat 2021 annual, which was written by Jed MacKay. So this is the only comic, I believe, in the entire run of the Contest of Chaos written by the guy who actually has been writing both of these characters. I think other than the Tiger Division's last miniseries, which basically starred Taeguk Gi, I'm pretty confident Jed MacKay's the only guy to write them as a team, if I remember correctly. But in any case, both of the characters are summoned to the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, kind of specifically because that's where the Jersey Devil is said to live, and it's a magical, mystical kind of thing. And when they both get there, they find crystals. Now, one of the weird things about this issue is it actually has Agatha as a narrative device talking to the audience throughout the length of it. She introduces Moon Knight, she introduces Taeguk Gi, and when they run into the crystals, she says, Etsium crystals. These crystals are pure chaos magic that has been accreted in physical form. So they are like literally chaos magic. But in order to earn that chaos magic, you have to work for it. You have to prove yourself for it. You've got to fight for it. And that is when Moon Knight and Taeguk Gi begin to battle each other, knowing that they've got to fight for some reason. So it seems like whatever Agatha is trying to accomplish, she is gathering chaos magic by having these various champions fight, earn the chaos magic, and then return to her, where she will then make use of it. I think, in theory. It's not explained, it's not spelled out. I'm very much guessing here. But the cool thing about this issue is while Moon Knight and Taeguk Gi are fighting, there's so much chaos magic in the air around them that they are transformed into alternate versions of themselves. Agatha even says something along the lines of like they will be changed into a what if. And so you get a fight where where both of the characters are turned into like magical avatars, where Moon Knight is turned into a living mummy and Taeguk Gi is turned into like a tiger man, and the two characters start fighting each other and continue to go at it. You get their ultimate magical representation where Moon Knight killed his patron, the moon god Khonshu, and became the new god of the moon, and where Taeguk Gi has become the most powerful version of himself. Taeguk Gi got his powers from something called the Psylot crystal. We don't know a lot about it. It's specifically just for his story so far. We know Doctor Doom wanted him, thanks to the last Tiger Division miniseries. But yeah, he has like Superman kind of powers, and the two characters are fighting each other. It's really interesting, and it's a fun way of exploring the potential of these two characters. And they finally get reverted back to themselves, and both of them are just like, What is happening here? Why is this happening? And Taeguk Gi's like, I don't know why it's happening, but I know I need those crystals, and you need those crystals. Like, we know we got to duke this out. We need that power for some reason. And Moon Knight kind of takes a deep breath, and he's like, dude, I don't. I've had power before. I've wielded Thor's hammer. I've driven Ghost Rider's car. I've struck with the power of the Moon Fist. I burned with the Phoenix. And it didn't get me anything. If anything, it cost me my daughter. So if you want these crystals, they're yours, man. I can live without them. And he just walks away. He just leaves, leaving Taeguk Gi to like go and touch the crystals in reverence, and then he gets teleported over to Agatha, which is, again, I love the fact that Jed MacKay got to write this particular issue. I don't think this issue really fits anywhere in Moon Knight's actual comic timeline. Like, I can't see a reason to contain this in your Moon Knight collection if you are a Moon Knight fan. However, it is a solid Moon Knight issue. It's got great character work for both of them. It plays up and explores both of their recent histories. It makes sense. Chris Lee's artwork really reminds me of I do not remember the artist's name. In the early 2000s / late 90s, there were a bunch of Chinese comics that began to get brought over to the United States. Creasley's artwork really reminds me of that art style. It feels very specifically Chinese artwork inspired. It's got very thin line work, good character body detailing. The facial expressions on Tae-guk Gi specifically are great. I do think Moon Knight doesn't really do all much, like, because I mean he's wearing a full face mask, but he looks very plain for the most part. But the alternate versions of the characters look so cool. They work really well. The battle works really well. Agatha looks probably the best she's looked under Lee's pencil, in my opinion. Overall, this to me is like a 10 out of 10. If you are a Moon Knight fan, then I would absolutely suggest getting this for your Moon Knight collection. Like, force it in there somewhere, because it's just a solidly well-written issue overall. It looks good. It reads well. We're 2 for 4 so far in the Contest of Chaos, but this one is an absolute banger. And sticking along with the themes of Tae-guk Gi, our next particular issue also features another Korean superhero. Our next issue is going to be the Spider-Gwen Annual. And we're going to cut things there. I don't know why I didn't think about this when I was conceptualizing this episode, but there are roughly 9 issues that make up the Contest of Chaos, and if I spend 10 minutes talking about each 9 issues, that's 90 minutes alone, which is an hour and a half, and that's not even counting the additional research and background that I wanted to give y'all with the Darkhold mini event and the Midnight Suns mini-series. So I got about halfway through the Contest of Chaos when I realized this episode's pretty long, and it's only going to get a bit longer. So we're going to cut this episode here. We're going to break the Contest of Chaos into 2 halves. In our next episode, we will cover the back half of the event, the last 4 issues, and my final thoughts on the Contest of Chaos. This is what happens when you don't write your episodes fully and you just go kind of off script. So I hope you all are enjoying the Contest of Chaos. We'll finish it up next week, and then we will move on to something else. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.